Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Romance Nights. We are your hosts, Kolleen.
And I'm Marjorie. For today's episode, we chose to pick one of our favorite authors as a guest for our birthday months. And since Colleen's birthday is in May, we chose New York Times USA Today and #1 Wall Street Journal bestselling author of contemporary romance, Penelope Ward. She grew up in Boston with 5 older brothers and spent most of her 20s as a television news anchor. She now resides in Rhode Island with her husband, son, and a beautiful daughter with autism. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So before we chat about your books, we kind of have like a few questions to kind of get to know you.
Yeah, of course.
Now, how did your career as an author begin and what made you start writing?
Yeah, in 2013, I was really getting into reading romance novels. And I honestly didn't set out to become an author. I started writing for fun. Back in those days, we used Skype, not Zoom. And my best friend was living in London and she was bored out of her mind because her husband was always working and she was home with a little baby. And I told her I would entertain her. So I started writing this story that I called Gemini. And I was literally just making it up on the fly. And I would read her a chapter every time we would talk. And this book, Gemini, which was sort of like started out as this little serial episodic story in my head, turned out to be my first book that I learned how to publish by reading a book on self-publishing. So everything happened sort of very unexpectedly. I wasn't setting out to become an author, but once I had this completed story that I had created for my friends' entertainment, I said, you know what? I should just publish this. And it sort of started from there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. So 2013. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a long time.
It is. And it's when a lot of the indie published authors started really coming out around that time because it was after 50 Shades of Grey. And there was a new hunger for reading at that time. People were looking for more books with like sort of edgy heroes. And a lot of the indie books tended to have, you know, kind of plot lines that were a little bit more edgy. And I feel like that was really when indie publishing for romance had its like heyday.
Yeah. Because I think back then I was not stuck because I enjoyed it, but the historical romance novels like the Lisa Kleypas and authors like that, Stella Cameron. But I don't remember like ever seeing anything more modern since like, I guess since 50 Shades. That was like the awakening for the world.
Yeah, it basically broke the mold, I think. And a lot of people were looking to sort of replicate not that story, but that feel that you had when reading such a different sort of flawed hero that you fell in love with.
So out of like, you know, writing, do you have like any hobbies that you do kind of like to unwind?
Yeah, you know, writing and daydreaming are sort of like my two like recreational. I don't consider writing a hobby per se. It's my job now, but I spend so much of my mental energy doing that when I'm not writing and when I'm not doing the business side of this, I do like to take walks, go to like Pilates and yoga type classes. I love just going like walking and getting a coffee and just, you know, kind of having a day out to myself when I can. But really I don't have any other serious hobbies besides creating stories.
Yeah. That's great. If you could take your hobby and turn it into a career and you just love your job.
That's exactly what happened to me. You know, I've had multiple jobs and actually multiple careers before I started becoming a writer. So I really just didn't see it coming. And it is the best type of job to have, one that you actually enjoy and don't dread, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you have time to read, who would you say are your go-to authors?
Yeah, I really like, you know, angsty romance. And so some of the books that I've read that I've really liked have been from authors like Jessica Hawkins. And I really like books that like, I love cheating stories. I love love triangles. I have like this, you know, sort of like, I don't even know how to call it, but it's basically like, I love to hurt when I'm reading.
Yeah.
So, you know, I definitely like off the top of my head, when I think of those kinds of stories, I think of Jessica Hawkins, but I've also like, I love reading books by like Serena Bowen and Penelope Douglas and There's a lot of authors in my genre that I've enjoyed reading. Sadly, I don't read as much as I used to because I do find it takes me out of my own story a lot. And I start to I need to sort of keep my brain in two worlds, this world and my story world. So when I go into a third world, it's like, it's almost like I can't handle it, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. That's so funny that you say that. Because I just messaged Marjorie today. I'm reading a love triangle and I just started crying because of something that happened. And so she's like, oh no, oh no.
No.
Some people just do not appreciate those. And I totally get that too.
I appreciate it because it seems like she's going to go with the guy that I want her to. So
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm more of I give myself a quota of how many emotional books that I can read in a year. And I feel like I've over succeeded my quota this year.
Yeah,
I was like,
did.
I'm done. I'm going to go to like
that makes total sense. And there are books that I've written that have taken a toll on me more than others. And some of the books with high angst that are very emotional, I've listened to them again after many years. And then I'm like, how did I even write that? And I could never write that again. You just can't you can go through it once, but you can't go through it again.
Yeah.
We're going to go to kind of like your writing process with regard to like the spicy scenes. How easy or how difficult is it to put the spicy scenes on page?
Yeah, so I feel like that's actually one of the hardest parts for me to write, only because you can only have so many different variations of these scenes, right? And when you've written 50 some odd books, it's like, how do I make this different? How do I make this different than the last? And so to me, it's actually one of the most challenging parts to write. It doesn't like phase me one way or the other. Like in the beginning, I think I might have been a little nervous about writing them. And I remember telling myself in the beginning, just write this as if no one's going to ever read it, and if you're only writing it for yourself. And that's what I used to tell myself in the beginning. But now it's more like none of it really phases me, but it's just more about how do I make this different and interesting for readers who not only have read all of my sex scenes, but are reading everybody else's,
I think like for me, it's the different levels of dirty talk that can set it too, more than the actual.
Yes, I think that's one of the more enjoyable parts for me to, to consume. So it's definitely something that I try to incorporate.
Yeah, you do. Now, when you are writing, do you like set a certain schedule to write, or are you only able to write when you would kind of like when it moves you to?
I definitely try to stick to a schedule because I find that a lot of times you're just not naturally in the mood. But then once you sit at the computer and start actually typing, you do get into it. And when you do this for a living and you have deadlines and, I have my editor that's waiting on this book on a certain day, you have to get a certain amount of words in every day. And so I try to keep to a minimum each day. And if I go over that, great. And so I try to maximize the time that my daughter's in school. And I will sit down in the morning and sometimes I'll procrastinate for a half an hour, but then I just sort of I'm like, okay, now you start. And I put on writing sprint timers. And so what I do is I'll go on YouTube and I'll look up writing sprints. And sometimes it's like with people and sometimes it's just like with images, and it sets off a little timer after 25 minutes. I'll write for 25 minutes and then I'll give myself a 5-minute break. And then it goes on for another 25 minutes. So that really helps me stay on task.
I think like that's awesome to kind of like hear how, different authors do like their writing process differently. And I totally get that. Like if you have, kids, you maximize when they're not there.
Yeah. And I'm also a morning writer. So my brain is freshest in the morning and I like, having that clarity. I feel like if I waited until 8:00 at night, there'd just be something lost. So I definitely need maximum clarity to write.
Yeah.
How do your friends and family kind of feel about your books, and have any of them read them?
Yeah, like most of my friends have, and I have 5 brothers. One of them I have not talked about with my about my books with, and that's partially because he and his family are a little religious, and I just sort of all of my brothers are different. So I just haven't mentioned it to him. But the rest of my brothers know. It's kind of odd. Like it just kind of like depends on how people perceive, sex, and romance and steaminess and everything. It's like you kind of know the people that are going to be like, when you tell them what you do, and you kind of know the people that would be open to it. I would say 99% of the people that I know and I'm comfortable telling them what I do for a living. And there's absolutely nothing shameful in what I write, but just that some people have preconceived notions about romance novels, and some people have preconceived notions about steamy content. And so you just kind of like read the room and know who's going to appreciate it and who isn't. And I never felt obligated to tell everybody what I do. I feel like I write for people I don't know. I don't write for the people I do know. And people I do know just have happened to find out about it over the years, and that's perfectly fine. But I try not to think about, I guess, what people think or care. I just want to do what I do and not worry about anything but pleasing the people that I know are going to want it and read it,
I think I love that. So you don't get inside your own head because you don't want it to affect the writing. So that's really smart.
And like when people find out, like people in my neighborhood or whatever find out that I read, they'll say, "Oh, I want to pick up one of your books." And I always say, don't pick up one of my books if you don't already want to read a romance novel. Don't feel like you have to read just because you know me and I wrote it. I said, because you might not like it. I said, I always say that. So basically, it's like if you normally read romance, go right ahead. If you don't bother. Don't feel like you have to read my book.
Now let's discuss the newest releases. So we have the first one was The Rocker's Muse, and then The Drummer's Heart.
Yes.
Now, for any new readers, would you recommend a certain order to read them in, or are they an interconnected standalone?
So I always try to write my books that anybody can read them in any order. So The Rocker's Muse is the first one. And so if somebody, now that the two books are out, if somebody were going to start with one, they should definitely start with The Rocker's Muse, because the hero from The Drummer's Heart was introduced in that book. They're going to appreciate it more. But if somebody just happened to pick up The Drummer's Heart and read it, at the very end, it tells them that there's also a story available for, the other characters. And so they could really go in the opposite direction. And I never write it in a way that it ruins one book for the other.
Okay.
So while you might pick up the second book and find out how that couple whether they had an HEA, you'll know nothing about how they got there. So I try to write it like that. But there's always generally an order that's preferred, but never required.
Because I didn't even realize at first when The Drummer's Heart came out, I thought it was just a standalone, but I need to read those.
Yes, I wrote it very carefully so that there's a major twist in The Rocker's Muse, and it doesn't give anything away about that. And I will tell you, most people have not been able to guess the twist in that book. And so I definitely think that, but you could read The Drummer's Heart and you still wouldn't know anything about the twist in The Rocker's Muse. So that's the beauty of how I wrote those books.
How many books will there be in the Rockstar romance series?
So originally I was going to make it a 3-book series because there are 3 band members, but I also sort of believe in giving myself freedom to change my mind. And so when I was in the middle of The Drummer's Heart, I said to myself, you know what? I think that this series would end well here. And I think I'm going to give the 3rd band member his fate in this book as well. So while he doesn't have his own novel, he was a good part of The Drummer's Heart, the 3rd band member, even though it was the 2nd band member's story. And he too received his fate in The Drummer's Heart. So I decided I was going to just make it a duology. And that's just sort of me saying, I think I'm done with this world. I loved being in it, but I think I ended it well and strong, and I would rather not drag it out.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Sometimes as an author, you just want to move into a different world. You're just ready to leave. And I think I've never been a long series writer. The longest series I have are with my co-written books. And we, strategically set them up as a series from the beginning. But I have a number. I'm sort of notorious for 2-book series. I did Stepbrother Dearest and Neighbor Dearest, The Aristocrat and the Surrogate. And I think it's just me as a writer. I never want to overstay my welcome somewhere and feel like I'm just creating stories in the same world just to be contrive these situations just to kind of keep readers wanting to buy them. So I kind of I like to end strong and keep people, I guess, wanting more, but like just moving on to another world. That's just sort of my MO. It's not even intentional. It's just sort of what I like.
It happens. I've had a couple series where like even you and I, Marjorie and I have discussed and we said, well, I really don't think book 3 was needed. Like we could have wrapped that up right here, but
right.
But sometimes authors have more to say.
Yep.
I don't know.
That's part of it too. Like if you read The Drummer's Heart and anybody that figures out what's going to happen with that third member in that book, you'll realize, okay, I'm not sure if there could have been an entire book based on this conflict. So when I decided what I wanted to happen to him, that was part of the decision. It was like, I could drag out an entire book based on this, but I actually think it's better displayed as a couple of chapters in this book. Like that to me is how I saw it. And so I just never want to, just drag something out, I guess.
I mean, I've seen that like with other trilogy where there's like 600 pages each book. And I was like, we could put this onto like 2 books and cut out some of the things.
And there are people that do very, very, very well by continuing series for a very long time. And it pays off for those authors. But I think it's just a certain type of author that just really can just be committed to that world and, have to do these like elaborate sort of like charts that tell you like where the families are and, who's child. And I've always kind of been a standalone queen. And so I tend to just keep them short.
Thank you for that. Because when it comes to the chart, I'm like, okay, where? Who is this?
Second generations, third generations.
No.
I mean, perfect example. I think it's like, those make sense when it's like the Mafia series, because, you can still different plot twists, but perfect example. I'm reading like a second generation right now. Just finished the first book in the second generation and I kept going back to the glossary because I was like, whose kid is who? Because I'm like,
right.
And I'm like, I'm confused. Like,
and don't get me wrong, I think readers love that a lot. But for me, it just makes my head spin. So a lot of times I'll just kind of like, all right, I'm out. Let's go to the next one.
No, that's understandable. Because I mean, like, as much as I enjoy them, sometimes like, I'm so confused. And I've read all the first generation books. And I'm like, there's just so many of them. And
I
think some of them were like, some characters like are half siblings that are married to the, like, it's just like discombobulated. I'm like, please give me a chart so we make sure that nobody accidentally get together that are related at some point.
Okay. Let's chat about the book that started my obsession with you. It was Stepbrother Dearest. I happened to come across this probably like 4 years ago or so in a Facebook like ad or so. I don't even know what it was. And I'm like, Stepbrother, what? What? I was like, this is all new. And I'm like, oh. So then I ended up getting it on the Kindle and then it transpired to Room Hate. I didn't know that you had Neighbor Dearest until this year, until you came out with the illustrated cover. But that's okay. I read it this year. I read it. Now, how did you come up with this story and what gave you the idea to come up with a step sibling romance?
Well, Stepbrother Dearest back in 2014. So it's been out now for 11 years.
Yeah.
And in those days, and I'm talking about it like it was ages ago, but it does feel like that. There were almost no step sibling books.
Right.
There were some, but I think what set Stepbrother Dearest apart from other books at the time is that I used the word stepbrother in the title. I was sort of like pushing out the actual trope like right there for the whole world to see. And it made a lot of people curious. And I was at a point in 2013, 2014 when I started writing that book. I'd say 2014. I wrote it. It came out in 2014 as well. I was just like, I want to write something forbidden. I want to write something that will kind of where the idea will kind of shock people. Today, that wouldn't shock people. There were like hundreds and hundreds of stepbrother books that came out after that book, but that was the first book that kind of became popular as a stepbrother book. And it kind of created its own subgenre, honestly. And which, I guess if you're going to have, a sort of thing to be responsible for, that's kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I'll take responsibility for that. But basically, I wanted to write something forbidden, and I dropped what I was working on at the time when the idea came to me, and I'm like, I'm just going to write this book. I feel like it's fun. It's going to be flirty. It's going to be angsty. I just want to write something that has it all. And I dropped everything. I put that book out, and then it went from oblivion to number 2 on Amazon,
Wow.
overnight. And I was like, people were apparently waiting for it. And I couldn't believe it. And it was like my first real, breakout hit, and it hit the New York Times, and it changed my career, honestly, making that decision.
Well, that was amazing.
This is the first book that, I've read of you, and Kolleen kind of was like, I think you will like this. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, I love stepbrothers and all that stuff. Like me thinking into it, getting into it, because majority of the step siblings nowadays are super bully and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, it's high school and stuff. And there's a little bit kind of bullyish behavior and stuff. But it was in the beginning. And then when we went to the part 2, I was like,
yeah.
And usually those kind of it's kind of short-ish. It's not super short, but it was short. It was taking breaks, because I was like, why do I want to cry? I was like, what is happening? I was texting her, I was like, there's HEA in this one, right? You didn't set me up to bawl my eyes out, right?
Yeah, people don't know what they're getting with that book. I think they look at it and they're like, this is going to be some silly, little bully romance and stepbrother, haha. But it is definitely turns into a very emotional book. And if people like audio, I just had the audio redone with Duet, and it's a beautiful audiobook. It really sounds like, you're hearing everything played out like a movie. So I recommend that for people that love audio.
I like to read it and then go to audio after. I feel like sometimes especially when it's a duet narration, I've noticed that sometimes I'm missing something. I think it's because of the performance. And I think to myself, I'm pretty sure I read this book, but it sounds it's almost like a different book that I read, kind of thing. So I love doing that.
I think it's a good way to experience a book that you've already read, kind of instead of rereading it, it's a different way to experience it. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. So I'm definitely going to look for that when it comes out.
It's out. It's out. The Duet just came out. What happened was I got my rights back because I had sold the rights to that book years ago, and I did get the rights back, so I had it reproduced.
Oh, good.
So you recently had illustrated covers done for, Stepbrother Dearest, Neighbor Dearest, and Room Hate.
Yes.
Do you have plans to do that for any of your other books?
So probably not a illustrated cartoonish people type cover, because I wanted to do those illustrated people covers because of the 10-year anniversary of Stepbrother Dearest. So I did those as sort of a special edition option. Right now, I'm still of the human model kind of trend for my ebooks. What I've been doing, and I feel like every release is just going to be different. What I have been doing is doing more discrete covers for an option for my paperbacks now. So with the Drummer's Heart and the Rocker's Muse, I had models on the ebooks, and then I had both paperback options for paperback. So I had some floral designs. I'm sort of all over the place with covers, but the only cartoon covers, I call them cartoons, but they're really nice illustrations that I did were for Stepbrother Dearest and Neighbor Dearest for now. I'll probably, I would assume, have some more illustrated people in the future. My Room Hate was done as illustrated people when it was purchased by Bloom Books. So they did do the illustrated people. So I have kind of a large mix now for a lot of different types of covers and options.
Yeah, I want to get the discrete covers for the Rockstar Duet, I guess.
They match really well. They have flowers, and each one has a symbol that corresponds with the hero. So the first one has a microphone and flowers, and then the other one has drumsticks and flowers.
Yeah. I know, I have to get them. Now, just curious.
Yeah.
Do you read physical books? Marjorie and I have this argument all the time.
Yeah. So it depends on, if my eyes feel tired and I don't want to look at any type of a screen or moving, words, I will pick up a paperback, but I don't have a ton of space, so I don't tend to buy a ton of paperbacks. I am honestly an audio girl first, and then probably I will read a mix of ebook and paperback, but there are times where I do prefer to read a paperback. And that's a lot of times when I'm just sick of looking at screens of any kind.
I like physical books. I don't know.
I think, yeah, there's definitely something really cool about holding on to that book and turning the pages. They definitely have their appeal for sure.
I don't think I haven't picked up ever since. I think like the first ebook kind of gadget I had was the Barnes and Noble Nook. So ever since I had that, I mean, I would buy them, but wouldn't like read. I just put them on the shelf. So
collect.
Collect. So now I don't read now. It's like especially if it's a special edition. I can't open them, and all that stuff. It's just
I get it because you don't want to spill anything on it, or I totally get that.
No, I read my special edition.
Yeah.
We always argue about it. I was like, what is
enjoy? Yeah, I mean, I like shoes. I feel like they're meant to be. Books are meant to be enjoyed, and if they have creases and everything, that means that they're lived in, part of life, enjoyed.
I recently, as a matter of fact, yesterday I just saw a post about what's it called? About the Fictional Flames Candle Company creating a candle for roommate. Yeah. Any chance we could get an Elec scented candle?
Actually, I think I don't know if it's been announced yet, but I believe we discussed that. So, so those are the two books I've actually that people seem to have the most interest in, sort of making like things off of those books. So the Room Hate one, I think there's a good chance there will be a Stepbrother Dearest one, and the Room Hate one is definitely the ocean theme to go with the beachy sort of story.
I need that. Yes, I need that one. Yeah. I wonder, what will Elec smell like? Did he smoke?
He did smoke. He smokes clove cigarettes. And there we go. There would be like I would say cinnamony, spicy. Yeah. Cinnamony and spicy would be the Elec smell.
There you go.
I mean, he eventually quit, but...
He did. Yes, he did.
So out of all your books, which one would you say the most difficult to write?
There are a couple. One being, I wrote a book called Jake Understood, which was an alternate POV to my book, Jake Undone. And it also included some new material. I think it's very difficult to do that, and I wouldn't do it again. So that was just sort of like, I wanted to give people a different perspective, but I also wanted to give them new material. But I realized after I wrote it, this was probably not the best use of my time. And so at the time, I was trying to keep a promise to my readers in fulfilling it. But just for me, the books that are hardest to write are the ones that I might have forced or tried to like fit into some kind of box, So that one was hardest for me to write from a difficulty standpoint. But then there are other books that are difficult to write just because of the challenges they pose. Like if you have a situation that, borders on cheating, but you don't want it to actually be cheating. So you have to keep this fine line and not make the characters look like jerks, but then allow them to enjoy some like passion and flirting. And there's all kinds of situations that can make a book challenging. So I'd say the one I'm writing right now has some of that in it. So I guess there's different reasons that a book can be challenging.
For any new readers, anyone who've just discovered you, which book would you recommend for them to read first? Just your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I usually say Stepbrother Dearest just because it's so popular and a lot of people were hooked on my reading from that. But there are so many books now that like really depends on the person's mood. I have some books that I've written that I'm particularly proud of that are a lot different from that vibe, like Sins of Seven, which is probably my most unique story. So
yes,
it
is.
It just depends on what people are in the mood for and what types of stories they love. Because I have like, different books that I would say come to mind. Like you could start with The Aristocrat and go on to The Surrogate. That would be awesome. You could start with Stepbrother Dearest and moved on to Neighbor Dearest. That's another good path. So I feel like there are different paths that people can take and they would equally be happy or hopefully.
Yeah, what's a really good? I just read it last week. When August comes?
When August Ends, yeah.
When
That's
August
it.
Ends.
Yeah, age gap
Great
summer
story.
story set on the lake. Yeah,
Yes.
I loved writing that one. That one comes to mind as one of the ones I actually had the most fun writing. That might
I was
have,
nervous.
yeah, it's like really been up at the top of like just what how relaxed I felt when writing it and just how much fun I had.
That was really good.
I love an age gap. I think it's like they hit
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, The Rocker's Muse is definitely my biggest age gap, and When August Ends is an age gap as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What is an 18 and he's 30?
So
no, she's 20.
she's 20
and he's
20
32.
Yeah, 34 and 20 turning into 21.
21.
The Rocker's Muse was 22 and 38.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's still a good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I start worrying about
I
20
know, it's
years
like-
from now.
Yeah.
Like they're real.
Yeah.
I know. I always tell her, it's like, they had an HEA, keep it at that,
Yeah.
and then move on to the next
Right.
one. It's like, don't think about when they're like 50
Right.
years later where they're at,
Right, exactly.
unless there's a second generation.
Right.
Then we can worry about it. I think it's like
Right.
I know.
one of the authors that we interviewed, we asked about that because in one of her first generation series, one of the MMCs was like already in his 50s.
Yeah.
And then the second generation that's coming up, it's like almost like 20 years later, something like that. And we actually had to ask, like, you didn't kill him off, right? Like, we're going to be sad.
That's a fair question. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't like it when somebody dies or anything.
No, nobody's
Right.
allowed to die in the book world.
Not in romance.
We're going to put you on a spot for a little bit.
Okay. Sure.
Out of all your couples, who is
Mhm.
your favorite?
Well, I'll probably say Elec and Greta, just because they just hold a special place in my heart. I loved their sort of adversarial dynamic in the beginning and how they evolved over time and their second chance. I just like the visual that I get when I think of them. I think they're just,
I know.
super fun. So I'll say Elec and Greta from
Okay.
Stepbrother Dearest.
I love their story, even though it made me
Thank you.
like emotional.
Yeah.
Like, am I gonna get an
Yeah.
HEA? Are we sure
Yeah.
about this? I was a little bit
Right.
nervous during that
Yeah.
part too. I was like,
because you're like, how is he going to pull that off? Yeah, I
Right.
get it.
and
Ugh.
kudos to Greta. Like, she was strong enough to her, like, no, you gotta go.
Right.
We're not doing this long goodbye. And,
Right.
I don't want you to cheat or anything like that. Like, just
Right.
go.
Exactly. Right.
Kudos to her. I love
Yeah.
that part. Like, okay, so
Thank you.
whew, no cheating. Thank you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
again, I'll have a heart
On the
attack if it
cusp.
happened. I was like, like,
Yeah. Yep. That's the fine line I was talking about.
I know. It
Yeah.
makes you nervous, but then we're
Yeah.
like, oof, all right.
I was-
Although I don't mind cheating.
I was very
Never mind.
nervous. It was like nerve wracking. I was like, oops, stop,
Yeah.
take a break,
Right.
walk around, take a lap,
Right.
and then okay, I need to like see what's
Right.
happening. I think part 2, every chapter, I was like taking a break. So I was
Yeah.
like, where is this
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. Exactly.
We know that you also co-write with author, and I hope I say it, is it V. Keeland?
Yep. Vi. Yep.
Keelan?
I used to think
Vi
it was you
Keelan.
before I met her too. Yep.
Now, what made you both to decide to write together? And is that process more challenging than when you write independently?
So Vi and I were friends before we ever started writing together. We met
Nice.
when some of our older books were in the same box set years ago when box sets were popular. And we kind of stayed in touch every day after that and
Nice.
just kept going back and forth, running things by each other. And then one day I sent her a fake book cover and I said, what do you think about this story? And it said Cocky Bastard on it. And it was
Oh,
just this model on the cover. And we started going back and forth with like this theoretical storyline and a road trip story that was really fun. And I think, I might have been the one that said it first. Like, would you want to write this for fun or just see how it goes? And it was sort of not a serious thing at first. We started writing this book together and it just all of a sudden we had a finished story, sort of like how my very first book started. It was just like spur of the moment kind of thing. And once we put that book out and it hit the New York Times and we did really well with it, we're like, well, I guess we should start writing together again as well. But that process is very different because Well,
Yeah.
our earlier books, we would just improvise. And so someone would write a chapter, the other one would pass it to the other. We would have no idea where we were going with it. They would have no idea where the other author was going. But now we do things a little differently. We do plot the story first. Each one of us outlines our own chapters. Then we go back and we each write those chapters we outlined. And we do take turns. So we both write both characters, but one will start the book, do a chapter or two. The other one does another chapter or two, and then we pass it back and forth.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So we're each with the book on our own. It's not like we go together and write the whole book together. She's got her chapters, I have my chapters, and then they all come together at the end.
Wow. I just read, I'm the worst with memory. Is it Dirty Notes? Dirty Letters?
Dirty Letters. Well, you got your
Dirty Letters.
you have a right to be confused because we have Hate Notes and we have Dirty
I know.
Letters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I read that one, and you would never know that there were two different authors that like together that you wrote that.
That's why it works. I mean, each one of us is writing. It's funny because you say we write together, but we really are writing alone, right? But we're writing, we're taking turns writing the same story alone. So, but when one starts, you kind of pick up on that voice and you pick up on the vibe and you just continue it. And then it kind of like takes on its own life that stays kind of cohesive.
So do you read like the previous chapter before you kind of like write?
Yes. Yep. As soon as she turns it into me, I read it. That's the very first thing I do. And then I generally now know where I'm taking it because we do outline ahead of time. In the past, I would just go in my own direction and she'd have to be surprised when she got it back. And I'd say the first few books were done that way. But then we did change we found that was not something we could continue forever. It was getting a little bit too much. So the first book was completely improvisational. So
what was the first book? Because now I want to read it.
Yeah, so that's Cocky Bastard. So like when
it is.
Yeah,
okay.
so when I sent her that photo with the fake title, Cocky Bastard, we ended up titling our book Cocky Bastard. And I'm proud to say I put a book called Cocky Bastard on the New York Times bestseller list. It's like the books that I have put on that list: Stepbrother Dearest, Cocky Bastard, Drunk Dial.
Yes, Drunk Dial.
Good titles. Kind of like they will jump out if somebody's looking at that list. They're like, wait, what?
For sure. Like, what the heck is this?
What is that title?
Yeah,
I know. Exactly. Because I would grab it. I'd be like, wait, what?
Some of those decisions weren't titling a book Cocky Bastard in retrospect was not a wise decision because it makes it very difficult to advertise the book because you can't have the word bastard. But, it is what it is. It's titled what it's titled. So,
yeah.
Hey, but it still made the New York Times.
It did. Back then, it was much easier to do that. So, yeah, we did start the list with that.
How many books do you plan to publish this year? Like, do you have like a set number?
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with my solo books. I write 2 books a year. One always publishes in the winter and the other always publishes in the summer. That's as much as I can handle. The co-writes have sort of been inconsistent over the past couple of years. We've had years where we've put out 2 and years where we put out 1. And this is going to be one of the years where we put out 1. And so we have a co-write that we just finished that's probably going to release in the summer. We just haven't solidified the release date. So I write on average 3 books a year, I would say, meaning 2 of my own and then one of ours, whether it's a half a one or a whole one.
It's interesting to see that, because we ask this question quite frequently, and it's interesting to see the different answers.
Yeah,
like me, I'm not an author, but I'd probably only get to write 1, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I consider 2 or 3 books slow in comparison to most of these authors now. And I don't know how you write more than that personally, because my brain just really doesn't do more than 1,000 or 2,000 words a day. And if I do 1,000 words a day, that means I finish a book in 3 months. But for me, I need an entire month for editing. So you need an editor, 2 proofers. That's another month. That's 4 months. Then I need another month for audio production, for getting ready for the release. So by the time you have these 5 months, then you're at the 6th month where you have release month. And then that month is spent getting the book out there, promoting the book. So even though it takes me 3 months to write the book, the release is really a 6-month process for me. So I don't know how anyone does more than 2 or 3 books a year.
Yeah. I know one author that we interviewed, they almost release every between 7-8 weeks.
Yeah. Some people have it down to a science, and I think there's probably some things that those authors might not do that I do. I don't know if they're doing
I don't
simultaneous
think.
audio.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
with
so
that.
like when you try to do simultaneous audio, that actually makes it very tricky to fast release because audio narrators are so hard to book now. I have my narrators booked through 2026, like through February of 2026. So it definitely, for me, that's a huge part of, spacing it out is the audio, which has become a big part of my business.
I think that's what it is, Marjorie. I don't know that a lot of the people have done audio. So, and if they do it down the road. Yeah.
And then you just have faster writers. Some people are faster writers. Some people, they may spend the whole day writing, as opposed to stopping, like say when your child gets home or whatever. Like there's different lifestyles too, I feel.
Now, if you could turn any book into a movie, which one would it be?
Yeah, so I usually have 2 answers for this. For the co-writes, I would say Cocky Bastard because it's a fun road trip movie. There's a goat, a fun Aussie hero. I just feel like that would be the funniest, coolest movie with lots of scenery and lots of just settings. So that would be one. And then for my solo books, it could really go anywhere. Like Room Hate would be nice. That would be Beach House Vibes. That could be a good movie. The Aristocrat would be cool because it takes place in the countryside of England for the second half. There's just I don't know. That's a tougher one to answer. I would take any one of my books, honestly. If anybody wanted to make them into a movie, I would happily let them.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think Stepbrother Dearest would probably be popular because like there's so many movies that are like step siblings coming out.
I know. And I keep waiting for that opportunity. I had an opportunity that came to me for that book that was not a movie, but it was like an episodic sort of web-based thing. And it would have required me to give up my rights to, the movie. And I said, I still held out hope in my heart for something bigger for that story. And so I did turn that down in order to hold on to my rights and say, you know what, I think I'm just going to hold them. And I'm hoping that someday somebody wants to make it into a movie.
Yeah.
It will happen.
So do you hear that, Amazon? Maybe
Right?
Can you hear that, Amazon, Netflix? No.
I keep waiting. I keep wanting that book to come back big. And, I keep holding out hope. So
I think it will work because as far as movie, because you start when they're senior, like you get their backstory, and then we time jump kind of like, they went their separate ways, have their own lives, and then come back together.
I think it would be super fun. I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to watch a movie like that.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, there's that other woman drama. It's not super dramatic, but because she was nice, it wasn't like
right. And then you have the Chelsea spinoff after,
right?
Yes. That went somewhere I didn't expect, and it was so good.
Don't spoil it for me yet.
The Neighbor Dearest.
That's all I'm saying. Yes, that was so good.
Neighbor Dearest, I at the time that I wrote it, I actually liked it better than Stepbrother. I loved writing that book. And so many people don't know it exists because I don't know what it is. It's like you said, you didn't know about it until I put out the matching covers. But it's partly because it came out like a few years after. I didn't have them come out soon together. So I thought of the idea after the fact. So that was part of the problem.
We need to get it. Like, we need this interview to blow up. So then they can be like,
that would be awesome.
That's an interesting, So are there any like subgenres, tropes, or any tropes, I guess, that you would like to write that you haven't written yet?
Yeah. I don't think I ever see myself going outside of contemporary romance. So like I don't see myself necessarily writing romantasy, paranormal, anything like that. In terms of tropes, I have covered a lot of them. I have not done like teacher student. There's certain ones I haven't done. I tend to just really favor staying within contemporary romance. I love close proximity stories, friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, but nothing that comes to mind that like I haven't done that and I plan on doing it and I'm craving it. I tend to just stick to what I really like. But I don't see myself ever really writing out of genre completely at all.
Now, here's where we get nosy. Are there any future projects or books coming out that you can talk about? Hint?
Yeah.
Little hint?
Yeah. I'm writing a book now that I'm about 40,000 words into, say out of about a 90,000 word book. So I'm probably a little bit under halfway, and it's coming out hopefully in August. It's set on the ocean in California. It involves a billionaire and it involves an artist, and sort of an opposites attract type book that has a twist and will be like 2 parts. So that's about as much as I can say. It's probably about as much as I really know how to describe it without giving away the secrets.
Right.
But I'm excited about it. I have a nice cover for it that embodies the feel of the book and the look of the hero. It's a little bit different of a cover for me. It's not as in your face, but it's still a man. It's still a man. So I'm looking forward to pairing that with. I think it's a good fit for the story. So I'm excited to announce that. It doesn't have a title yet. I do have my narrators booked. I have my everything set to go with it, and hopefully it will be out this summer.
Perfect. That's exciting.
That's exciting. Yeah. We love billionaires anyway. So.
Yeah, I don't write too many billionaires, to be honest. This one is one of my first, I'd say, billionaires in a while. I would tend to write a lot of just, I don't know, other types of heroes, other like rock stars, that kind of thing, but not a ton of billionaires. So
we're still being nosy.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind.
Do you have, like, besides the ones that, like the illustrated covers, do you have any other special editions that you plan, or book boxes, I guess, that you have?
Yeah, I did sign up. I don't think I'm allowed to say, but I did commit to a book box for 2026, and that's going to be really cool. And it might include one book that we've talked about a lot today. So, I did commit to that, and so I'm excited about that. I don't think I can say though. I had 2 book boxes in the past year. One was cover to cover, and that had When August Ends.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah, that was beautiful cover. I loved it. They had asked me what I saw for the vibe for that, and I said, that book, it takes place on a lake, older man. Like, I just see like a bonfire type flames, maybe a purple hue. And they just totally nailed it. They sent me that cover. I was like, that's exactly what I saw in my head. So they did a great job with that. And the only other book box I had done before, we put my special edition of The Surrogate was in the romance reveal box. And so I do have my The Aristocrat and The Surrogate have alternate covers. Those are the first 2 I did. And those have like a very royal themed cover, but they have like a symbol in the middle of each. One has wedding rings and the other one has the baby carriage. So that version of The Surrogate went into the romance reveal box, but nothing in terms of like, other than that one that I have coming up in 2026, nothing other than that in terms of special editions.
Last question. Are you planning to attend any book signings this year? And if so, which ones?
Yeah. So I did commit to a signing in October of 2025. However, it has not been announced yet, but I will say that
going
in a different, it's not Philly, but it's in another location that I don't typically sign in. So a little bit more Midwest.
Oh my God. Oh, are you going to the one we're going to?
I hope.
I don't know. Which one are you going to?
No, that's not Midwest.
Well, it is kind of
Midwest. Wait, is it Midwest? I don't know. Maybe I'm saying the wrong area.
It is,
but this is not
Midwest.
This is not a place that I've ever signed before. So I don't think I'm allowed to say.
Okay. Well,
but
I was going to ask, is it a big one, small one?
It's a very big one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's not a
no.
small one. No,
Shoot.
it's a very big one.
Wah, wah.
So that was a last minute decision. But that's all I'm doing for 2025. And then
Okay.
2026, I can announce because it's been announced,
Okay.
which is strange because I can't announce 2025, but I can announce is Love Letters to Boston, which is a signing by the Southern Belle Book Events, and they are having a signing in Boston, which is my hometown. I don't live there now. I live in Rhode Island, but I grew up in Boston, so I will be doing that. I will be doing actually a conversation. I will be the conversation partner for Brittany Cherry at Love Struck Books in Boston on April 23rd.
Nice.
She is releasing a book with Source Books, which also publishes Room Hate. So I am doing the conversation piece for that.
Darn, I wish I still lived up north, but I don't. So there's no Boston for me.
Yeah, I know.
One of these days, I'll make it.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's
Well,
just
great.
it is kind of hard to like plan ahead. Like a lot of the signings, there's
for
already
sure.
like planning for 2027. It's like I don't know what I'm doing next
Oh
year.
yeah,
I
exactly.
know.
And honestly, I will tell you that the signings, from my perspective, I love them. I have so much fun meeting people. They do take so much out of me that I can't do a lot of them because just the travel, the anticipation, the books, getting them there, the stuff, the just being on for 8 hours straight. It's so much that I really can't do more than 1 or 2 a year. So I feel like it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, even as a guest, it's a lot.
Oh yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
I went to my first one last year. I was like, this is exhausting. I can't do more than
It
one.
is.
And
No, it is.
so I mean, kudos to the people that like attend a lot in a year.
Sure.
I was like,
Yeah.
kudos to you guys because
And the thing is, as from an author perspective, you never want somebody to find you looking tired or sad because then they might think, oh no, she doesn't like, she's just mean. And so like, you want to make sure people always see you smiling. People always see your best, but smiling for 8 hours straight, your mouth hurts. It just literally like your mouth literally aches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I couldn't do it. And I don't like a lot of people. Like it stresses me out. It's too much.
Yeah.
Too much people-y time.
I know. I was like, for me, I was like, and that was the one in Boston that I attended last year was like a huge one. I was like, this is too many people. I can't.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
Yeah.
This needs to like be more friendly.
It's very overwhelming.
God. It's like I can't people. So I told her, I was like, we're gonna go one. It has to be smaller, which is
we're going to Wonderlust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where we're going. So that's where I thought you were going.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I wish I were. I'd love to meet you guys.
One day.
Oh, well,
maybe next year.
One day.
Or, whenever.
Pick another one. So. That brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for making time to meet with us and agreeing to be the guest author for my birthday episode.
Oh, yay. My pleasure.
It was a pleasure to meet you and to have you. And for the listeners, be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of our new episodes. If you have any authors you'd like to see or any topics you'd like to see us discussed on the podcast, you can DM us on Instagram at Unfiltered Romance Nights. Well, that's all. See you next time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.